Hello again and welcome to Backyard Farmer. I'm Kim Todd. We're so glad you could join us for the next hour of answering those gardening questions. In the past, we've been able to take your phone questions. We are not able to do that right now, but you can still submit those questions and pictures for a future show. Send us an email to byf@unl.edu. Tell us as much as you can about your question. And as always, tell us where you live. Don't forget to follow us on social media pages, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Pinterest. We'll start with samples. What is on that or in that? Or what is that, Wayne?
We were joking earlier, we might have to name him Slimer.
Oh.
But what I've got here is I've got a pear slug that I pulled off of my dwarf cherry tree. Now, these little guys will get onto hawthorn, apple, as well as pear, as the name implies, and they look just like a little drop of goo on the leaf there, so a little slimy green thing. You can see the damage right there below where he's at. So they feed on the upper surface of the leaves and they scrape off that top layer. Most of the time there are not going to be enough of them to do damage to the plant or to hurt what's going on. Occasionally you can get enough of them where they will reduce enough leaf area where you have to do something. Fortunately, this is something you can clear off with a hose really readily. They fall off easy and they do not climb back up. So hose is a good option here, especially if you've got a good solid brass jet nozzle.
And do they hurt the fruit too, or is it mostly the foliage?
Leaf feeding.
Okay.
Leaf feeding only.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, Kyle, oak leaf hydrangea.
Indeed, and I've been getting a lot of questions about leaves that are just turning white or have these white things on them. So I thought I would bring leaves where the entire underside has turned white. That's with our old friend powdery mildew. And so again, this powdery mildew, it's a common name for a disease that really can attack. There's an individual fungus, powdery mildew fungus, that attacks pretty much every plant that's out there. And unfortunately, we're not able to see really the fuzziness of these, but the underside of the leaves are supposed to be this nice dark green color as well. So here you can kind of see the contrast, at least for the white fuzziness. And then also what can happen, we often talk about powdery mildew as being not terribly damaging, just kind of a cosmetic issue. However, if you do have severe infection, kind of like I have on my hydrangea, if it infects when the leaves are still in the bud, then we can get some deformities that occur. And that's kind of what's going on right here. And especially if we go out to the leaf tips, we can even see that the veins are kind of becoming necrotic as well, just as they're not able to transport the nutrients near as well. As far as control of this disease, really this is one of those where cultural controls will be your best friend. And so spacing. Whenever you buy that new plant, I thought, I have a 3-foot area. I can probably fit 4 oak leaf hydrangeas in there.
Kyle.
And then I thought, okay, I can fit 3, and now 2, and now I have 1. But proper spacing when you first plant things will go a long way in preventing powdery mildew. Anything else you can do to decrease leaf wetness period, so morning watering from the base, and also some pruning to increase airflow through the canopy will help too.
And I think one of the hard things about oak leaf hydrangea is, depending on the cultivar, the underside will actually naturally be fuzzy and white.
Yes,
so they can't tell the difference.
Yep, and we do have you can see some of the hairs on the top side of this one too, which I should have told the camera guys beforehand, but alas. So, there we go.
Yep. All right, thank you, Kyle. Elizabeth, that is interesting.
Interesting is a very good way to put this. What this is asparagus, and this was actually brought in by a viewer. But what it is it's an asparagus with fasciation. So fasciation is what happens when there is some kind of damage to the growing point. And what happens is the one growing point then starts to spread out, and it makes this really cool fan shape. Now, the fun part about this plant is this viewer a few years ago gave me a sweet potato with the exact same thing, the fasciation that was way wider on that. But with the fasciation, it's not going to cause any damage to the crown or anything along those lines. I wouldn't eat this. I mean, somebody could try, but it's probably going to be really woody inside because we have a lot of asparagus fibers in there. So, you know, if you see this, you can go ahead, you can pick it, you can get it out of there. There are some plants out there that are made for fasciation, and so there's a really cool pussy willow, and it's fan-shaped on purpose. And so when we have these out in the garden, sometimes we'll see them with dandelions, or they'll be kind of fused together. Sometimes Gerber daisies will have kind of two heads together. Nothing to worry about, nothing to really control, just kind of enjoy and just look at this odd little wonder that you have.
It is really strange to see fasciation. All right, thank you. You get the first set of picture questions, Wayne. The first one comes to us from Scotts Bluff. And I found all of these Monday, June 15th. What are they?
He's been popular the last couple of years. These are those Gorgon checker spots defoliating on those sunflowers. So they are going to turn into a butterfly. So this is something you probably want to let go if you can, especially if it's a volunteer wild sunflower. It's not really going to do much damage.
Excellent. So then you have another one. She lives in Omaha. Volunteer sunflowers look perfectly happy and healthy. Fast forward to 5:30 that same day, and she said they were only about an inch long. They hide under the leaf. They left the dill and the milkweed alone.
It's the same thing.
Yep. So both sides of the state on Monday,
Yep.
apparently they all got on social media and said, "Let's go attack."
Yep. Coordinated assault.
All right. And then we have this is a rural Lebanon, Kansas viewer. Terrible time with the garden. Now has rhubarb leaves riddled with holes, small yellow caterpillars covering the back of the leaves, and I think you can just barely see a couple of them on there. She can't find anything about them. She did find some very small yellow eggs on the back. What do you think?
Okay, well, I can see 6 of them on there.
And they're not really all that small, are they?
No, they're fairly good size. These are yellow woolly bears, also known as Virginia tiger moths. And they do hit rhubarb. The small yellow eggs, if I'm going to guess on those, I'm going to probably go lady beetle eggs on those. So those are some good guys you want to keep around. You could try some BT on these. Some dipel would be the way to go if you're going to go that route. Otherwise, they're large enough and easy enough to find. Hand picking would be fairly simple.
All right.
And removal.
And they turn into what?
A white moth with an orange side on the abdomen.
All right, excellent. And then you got from Nebraska City what is this?
This is a fun one. Since the head is pointed and the mouth parts are sticking forward, we know this is a firefly larva.
Oh.
And my sister-in-law actually sent me a picture of one very similar to this. And she actually caught it with the bioluminescence on it as well. So some of the larvae can bioluminesce. If it had a flat, straight head, then we would know it would be a sylphid beetle, which is a decomposer of animal carcasses.
One of those. Excellent. Thank you so much. All right. Rots and Spots night, of course.
All right.
This one is a Rising City viewer. Hollyhocks are just starting to show those spots on the leaves. They want to know if there is a treatment because last year they virtually eliminated a lot of the plants.
Yeah, so this is Hollyhock Rust, one of the more common and devastating diseases of hollyhocks. As far as controlling them, one of the big things for controlling rust species really doesn't matter what type of rust you're dealing with, but you want to make sure that we're eliminating some of those alternate hosts. And so rusts always have 2 different hosts, and the alternate host for hollyhock rust is wild mallow. So if you have any mallow weeds, that would be a good thing to get rid of. If you are looking for other control options, and so sanitation works very well. This is one of those rusts that can actually overwinter in Nebraska on plant debris. So make sure you're cleaning up that bed, getting rid of all the diseased tissue. And if you did want to apply some sort of chemical control, really right about now when you're first starting to see symptoms show up. Fungicide, so a copper fungicide applied about every 7 to 10 days based on weather would effectively control this too.
All right. Your next one is garden beans with yellow blotches.
Yeah, this one is not entirely sure about, but I think that this is a bacterial disease known as halo blight, the early stages of it, so we don't quite have that nice halo, but we do have those yellow blotches that are occurring. Halo blight is caused by a pseudomonid bacteria, and this is one of those bacteria that do well in lower temperatures. And so the cooler weather that we've had is going to cause an increase in this. Control, not too much to do aside from roguing out the infected plants.
All right, and your third one here is Council Bluffs viewer. She has little dots on her pinky winky hydrangea. She has a limelight hydrangea not too far away. They're flat, they're not raised eggs. So what do we think this is?
I think this might be another bacterial disease as well. Based on if we zoom in on the lesions, we can see that they are fairly angular, which we tend to see more of with bacterial diseases. And there is a bacterial leaf spot of hydrangea. Again, not a whole lot of chemical control for our bacterial diseases. If you would want to apply something, maybe a copper product may slow it down a little bit, but really sanitation, so removing those infected leaves, and then again, pruning to increase airflow through the canopy is going to be your best bet to fight that.
All right, thank you, Kyle. Elizabeth, your first question comes to us all the way from Torrington, Wyoming. She has a honey locust. She thinks it's scald. I think we have a couple pictures of this. She said they gouge the turf under it. She's wondering if they can take the sod away from the tree, put that to rock. They do water in the winter because they do have sandy soils, and they really want to help whatever's going on with the honey locust. So it's kind of two questions there.
So with the honey locust, more than likely we're probably not looking at sun scald. When we get to a mature tree of that size, there's a possibility for canker. What I'm seeing a lot of is just natural bark coloration on the honey locust. In terms of keeping the mowers away, sure, you could put a tree ring out and around it. If you're going to put rock, don't put plastic down first. What you could do is you could put a layer of mulch so that way there's some organic matter there, and if you wanted to put some rock down, you could, because we know that you're probably going to have just a little bit of wind and that mulch is not going to stay put on its own. Just continue to try to keep the mowers away from there so we don't continue to have that mower interaction and then that possibility for some canker to kind of slip its way in there.
All right, excellent. And your next one is an Omaha viewer that has a new honey locust. Seems to be heading south for the winter or north for the summer or something. He wonders what he can do about this.
So with the newly planted trees, we very rarely try to prune too much out of them. What you could try to do with this guy is try to even it out by trimming back some of the side that's just a little bit too much and do like a heading back cut so that way the other one starts to take off. You can give it a try. I don't know if it's going to make much difference. It depends on why is that tree leaning. Is it leaning because there's a lot of shade nearby and it's reaching for more sun? If that's the case, pruning and doing some heading back cuts isn't going to do a lot of good in that instance.
All right, and they don't want to tie it down tight.
Do not tie it down tight. Do not get the ratchet strap or the rope and try to move it back over because that's not helping the tree out in the long run.
All right, thanks, Elizabeth. You know, if you've been following our Digging Deeper series, you've been treated to a few discussions about rain gardens. Tonight, we're going to show you something unique about the design of one such rain garden right here in Lincoln. I'm here with Chris Reiswig, and we're going to be talking today about a fabulous rain garden, which is way more than what people typically expect of a rain garden and fits right into what we've been talking about all season. So Chris, tell me about the process that you used to figure out how to build this absolutely beautiful space.
Well, we went to the Home and Garden Show and found out that the city of Lincoln had a watershed water rain garden program. And I thought, what is that all about? So I took a brochure, I put in an application, a very fine lady came out and told me I could have a rain garden. And so I thought that would be awesome. I knew really not much about the process, and so I just started from that.
What were the real big challenges? Because of course a rain garden really starts with the rain and getting that water downhill.
Well, we had it professionally designed, so that helped us understand what we thought would happen. So we had the sod cut, we had the grading done professionally, and then as soon as it was done, we had a 3-inch downpour. And so I went out with my iPad and I noticed we had a river where we didn't want a river. And so that was very helpful for the designer to be able to come back and regrade it before the plant material went in.
How about picking the plants? What was that all about, and how does that progress over the years?
So having the rain garden has allowed me to plant some plants that I would have never been able to plant because I don't have a boggish, wet soil area, but I do now because I have a rain garden. And so the rain garden attracts plants that normally I wouldn't be able to have. Sometimes there's butterflies. We have neighborhood mallards that live here. Every fall I have a hummingbird that stops by, so I'm sure to plant the plant that the hummingbird likes. So this has given me opportunities to grow plants for pollinators that are only found in wet areas, and since I have a rain garden, those plants can grow with a very happy outcome.
One of the unusual things about this rain garden is it's not just yours. This looks like it belongs to at least one neighbor, if not all of them in the neighborhood. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, when we had our design finished, I thought it would be very neighborly for me to go ahead and speak with my neighbor to just explain what was going on, because it was a big, big transformation. When I showed him my plan, he said that he was wondering if he could get involved. When I talked to the professional designer, she said, I've never done a shared rain garden, but won't that be epic? And so working with the designer at the same time, we were able to come up with one plan and do the plants that were complementary at the same time.
Bob, tell me about what you love about this space. What do you like about it?
Well, for one thing, the plants, the variety of plants has just attracted so many neighbors. I've had one lady that stops by regularly and pushes my doorbell and comes up and thanks me for having this here with the flowers and things.
So one of the things that Chris mentioned was the wildlife.
Yeah.
You have a very clever trick to be able to help that wildlife stay. What do you do?
Well, when we put in the underground watering, I moved my bird bath from the backyard to the front, and then I made that a zone so that I can, from my telephone, I can turn the water on and off on there. And it's always full for the birds to drink and take baths in.
Many thanks to Chris and Bob for letting us show you that rain garden. We thought it was a great example of that concept, as well as how you can share with your neighbor, and to be able to do that along the property line was pretty fabulous. All right, next we have some fun ones. I love the way this first one talked about it. This is a Blair viewer. Roses they brought in that have these suspended eggs. The night before they had just watched the SpaceX Starlink satellites train cross the sky, so they thought it was a good resemblance. And then a second viewer in Lincoln had yellow onions with little hair-like growths, and they wonder what that is. What are those two?
You're doubling up on me tonight.
I know.
These are green lacewing eggs. And this is pretty typical. They have that stalk, and then the egg sits on the tip. And when they're first laid, they're green. These are yellowing, which means they're getting close to hatching.
And tell our viewers.
And they are voracious little predators of aphids and other small soft-bodied insects. So these are very beneficial for you to have around.
And they're so cool to see, those little eggs. They're so cool. All right, so now you also have a Torrington, Wyoming viewer. She has sent several pictures about cherries, and she was getting little black sucked spots out of her cherries last year. And she found holes in the cherry leaves, some small webs. She also then, here's the insect that she found staying on the tree. She wants to know what she can do for these cherries, and she's asked about 7.
Well, 7 wouldn't work very well for this particular critter. It's a piercing, sucking mouthpart insect, and typically 7 doesn't work as well for those types of insects. And this is actually one of our good guys. This is an assassin bug. So this is out there stalking the things that are trying to get into your cherries. We wouldn't necessarily want to be doing anything that would keep him from doing that, or her. We don't know which one it is. But at this point, if she's got problems with holes in her cherries, the first thing to look for is a crescent moon shape. It could be plum curculio. And that is something you have to catch early before they make those marks. Those marks are when they're laying the eggs inside of the cherry. So at this point, if you're seeing marks, you're too late.
So she would treat next year when?
You treat right after bloom,
Okay.
and right when you start to get the small green cherries on there.
All right.
Because that's when the females start to show up.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Wayne. Okay, we had several of these come in this week from different viewers. Penstemon
Looks like my Penstemon.
and Penstemon and Penstemon. So what do we have going on?
So this is Penstemon Rust. Yeah, very, very common this time of year, especially with some of the moisture that we've had. I know at least in Lincoln, it's been a toad strangler today. It's for a heavy rain.
Yeah.
But yeah, with that added moisture, these rust fungi will be more active. Typically on the bottom sides of the leaves, you'll start to see these little fingers that will appear, and on the top side, just a red and yellow circle. Typically, they won't cause too much damage to the Penstemon. Likely won't shorten its lifespan at all. If you are concerned about it, though, once you're seeing spots like this, control is not really going to be an option aside from pruning to increase airflow. Biggest thing will be to beat some fall sanitation to make sure we're removing the Penstemons that are spent from this year. So hopefully next year we don't have near as much inoculum.
So if they do want to treat next year, immediately when they emerge, and with what?
Yeah, so really once you start to see the smallest dots showing up, a product like something with chlorothalonil, so Daconil or a copper product would work well for that.
All right, and then this is an Elm Creek, Nebraska viewer. Strawberries and ours in the Backyard Farmer Garden look like this too.
Yeah, and so this is a Cercospora leaf spot of strawberries. Often has these kind of reddish purple lesions. As the lesions age, the centers become a little will become white to tan, but they'll still maintain that dark purple margin. Sanitation is a great thing for this as well. However, again, fungicides, chlorothalonil will work pretty well to control Cercosporas too.
All right, thank you, Kyle. All right, you have a couple of river birch questions, Elizabeth. The first one, the tree is only 5 years old, and everything in this area, the peonies and everything else, are also turning sort of this yellow. I think we have another picture or two from this viewer. So there's the birch, and then the third one is a peony or something. This is newer construction. He's wondering what's going on with all the plants in this one area.
So what we're looking at is that construction grade soil. More than likely the good topsoil was scraped off the top, and then you're left with the subsoil. The subsoil doesn't have a lot of nutrients in it. Unfortunately, there's not a lot you can do to help amend your soil at this point in time. You can inject the river birch with iron, and that might help. The other plants are going to be struggling for a little while, unfortunately.
Pull the rock, do some organic mulch.
Try some organic mulch next to those plants. It's not going to hurt. That's going to help to keep those peonies, especially from cooking in that hot sun.
All right, and your next one, next couple of pictures, is an older river birch in an older part of town, 40 years old or so. It isn't a raised bed. Seeing one of the big main canes really kind of go downhill. He's concerned that he overdid it with a triclopyr herbicide treatment for his lawn, and that is actually causing the birch to die. It was a formulation that really ended up being 4 or 5 times what the rate was on accident. So what do we think here?
So first and foremost, that's a good example of how we need to read and follow label instructions, because if triclopyr is applied at the right rate, it's not going to be an issue in the environment. Secondly, when we have a 40-year-old birch, we're doing really, really well, and it had a good run. No. So at this point in time, regardless if it's the trichopere or the age, it's just going to be a waiting game to see how that tree reacts and how that tree comes out of it. The main thing is to make sure that it gets that inch of supplemental moisture a week. My guess is you're probably going to lose that 1 liter that seems to be the one that's dropped a majority of its leaves. We want to avoid fertilization. And it being in a raised bed's not helping it out any. So I'd be on the lookout for signs of stress, weighing some of the birch borers. We need to be on the lookout for those and just wait and see how that tree reacts.
All right.
Yeah,
And sharpen
bronze
the,
birch borer especially attacks stressed trees.
yeah. And sharpen the chainsaw for that beautiful lumber.
Yeah.
All right. Well, just as soon as we got our garden installed, all kinds of beautiful plants took off. Everything looks great. Let's take a few minutes to hear from Terry James out at the Backyard Farmer Garden.
This week in the Backyard Farmer Garden, everything is growing really well. Mulch is going down, it's been a process, but we're seeing lots of flowering coming along with some of our stuff. Our milkweed, remember we are a monarch watch station, so we do let our milkweed go, but we have a little bit too much, so we're gonna thin that out in amongst some of our beds. We see a lot of our flowers starting to grow vertical, so we're gonna start pinching some of those back so we get much more bushy plants, especially within our containers. Coleus is one of the ones that really has, that shows that a lot. We're trimming back a lot of our herbs. We're seeing flowers on our herbs. If you want to use them for culinary reasons, then we're gonna keep those flowers off. A lot of the culinary oils go away if you let your herbs flower. However, a lot of herbs are great pollinator attractors. So if you're not gonna cook with them, let them go ahead and flower so you can attract some of those pollinators. So stop by the Backyard Farmer Garden and check it out.
It's time for lightning. You ready, Elizabeth?
You bet.
All right. Hackberries are losing yellow leaves. What is going on?
Environmental condition.
All right. We have a viewer who has used soybean mulch on her vegetables. She's wondering, she thinks it's dicamba damage. Would that be a possibility?
Pass. No, I'm not real sure on that. You'd have to look and see if it was tested and if there was enough time for that interval in between.
All right. This is a Columbus viewer. She has a small globe blue spruce and she wants it to stay that small. When and how does she prune that?
So when we're pruning those evergreens, we want to prune them just after the new growth begins to emerge on those new candles.
All right. This viewer wonders whether avoiding overhead watering is intended to keep water off the foliage of plants or to keep the dirt from splashing on them.
A majority of the time it's to keep the dirt from splashing up.
All right. We had herbicide damage on a couple of large gardens, plants in a large garden in Spencer, Iowa. Can they eat the rest of the produce?
The recommendation of a plant that's been hit with herbicide injury is to remove the plant, would be the most cautious. The next most cautious would be to remove the flowers and the fruit that were there at the time of the application.
All right. Excellent. Thank you. Nice job. All right. Let's see. You ready?
Always.
All right, this is a 30-foot maple. The leaves turned into potato chips overnight. What disease would cause that of maple?
Environmental stress.
All right, and if this were verticillium wilt, what would happen instead?
If it were verticillium, you would expect to see some flagging, so one branch that's starting to turn crispy, and then it would slowly spread throughout the rest of the tree.
All right. Can you replant tomatoes in the place where you tore out ones that have beet curly top virus?
I would not recommend it. However, the vector for beet curly top is an insect. It's a leaf hopper. So really, if they're anywhere within a 50-foot area, they're probably going to still be at risk.
All right. How do you control severe powdery mildew on 9-bark?
Pruning and then a copper fungicide at the first sign of symptoms.
All right. Is there a pathogen affecting the tips of spruce, and what is it?
Yes, there are a few different pathogens that can affect the tips of spruce. One would be Serococcus tip blight.
And what do you do about that?
Best thing for that is going to be pruning, especially if you're seeing injury this time of year. Not a whole lot that can be done. Early in the season, there are some fungicides that are available for that.
Excellent. All right, are you ready?
Well, what's left?
We have an Omaha viewer who has the Lysimachia creeping jenny that is completely covered with tiny little holes. What is that? Insect?
Sounds like a flea beetle problem to me.
Okay, what does she do about it?
Oh, those are easy. Carbaryl.
All right. We have a viewer that has huge ant colonies in his lawn, and he's tried various pest deterrents. What now?
I would go for one of the baits. They do make outdoor ant bait stakes. Might be the next thing to try.
All right. What is the worm from this viewer that turns color when it eats a flower? Turns the color of the flower.
That is tobacco budworm.
Okay.
Feeds on a lot of different things and turns the color of the flowers that it eats. Also, a few other things will do that too.
All right. What is the control for tobacco budworm?
2 bricks.
Pick and brick, huh?
Pick a brick.
All right. Is Carbaryl a good choice for caterpillar control?
It generally works well for caterpillars because they're foliar feeders.
All right. What are the bright orange insects on milkweed right now?
Those are probably large milkweed bugs.
Excellent. Nice job, all. Everybody.
Tosses their
Pretty
way.
good.
Lobs.
When is are all just ID, that's not fair, is it? All right, Elizabeth.
It's got
What do
environmental.
we have?
Come on.
What are plants of the week, Elizabeth?
So we've got some really cool plants of the week this week. Starting off, we're going to go with the yellow one. What this is Plains Coreopsis. This is a tough plant. It is a native plant. It likes those well-drained, kind of dry sites. What you can do is when you see these blooms that start to fade, just go ahead and begin to deadhead them and take them off, and that'll allow the rest of these blooms to go ahead and start to rebloom again. It also helps to reduce the seeding by taking those off before the seeds are viable. It spreads by rhizomes and it likes to form colonies, so be sure to put it in the landscape in an area where it's going to be happy, where it can colonize. The other one is a really cool Asiatic lily, and I say really cool Asiatic lily because of the coloration that it has in there. It's got both the light around the outside and dark in the center. It's a lily called pup art. The lilies are going to do best in full sun. They're going to have big blooms. They have very few enemies, although rabbits will eat them off when they first start to come up. If you decide to bring your lilies inside, what you want to do is you want to go ahead and remove those anthers before that pollen sac goes and gets mature. The reason for that is so you don't have pollen all over your fingers and all over your house when you bring those inside. But some really nice plants of the week this week.
Excellent. And they are all in the Backyard Farmer Garden. So come visit. All right, you ready for this?
Let's go.
All right, this is a viewer who has raspberries with issues. They are a southern exposure next to the concrete porch. She's wondering what this is. And I think we have a couple pictures of this one.
Yeah, there's a good one in the back and there's a good one in the front. This is a good way to send things so we know what's going on both sides. When I looked at this, I couldn't find any feeding damage. I couldn't see any evidence of webbing where it might be one of the leaf rollers that may have tied those up together. To me, it looks like one of Kyle's buddies, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Not entirely. I've never haven't seen anything like this. There are some fungal pathogens that raspberries can get. Spirulina is one of them that can cause these large blighted areas of leaves, but typically it's not going to be right in the middle of the leaf. So I almost wonder about some sort of injury that had occurred, and then maybe we have secondary things just coming and colonizing on the dead tissue.
Yep. So maybe if this continues, she could send us some more pictures. All right. Your next one is a Council Bluffs viewer who lives in the country. She has 6 tropical hibiscus. Only one has the insect. They still remain. She doesn't want it to spread to anything else. She didn't find it on the leaves, just on the buds.
Yeah, this is pretty typical with aphids and hibiscus when I've had these come in before. They can try the hose. I seem to remember this one, had tried the hose and they couldn't quite get everything off. That's tough when you're down in a growing point and there's places where the jets of water don't reach and things escape. One of the things that they can use are like an insecticidal soap. Those do work fairly well for aphids, and so that's something that they can try.
All right, excellent. All right, this is a Clarinda, Iowa viewer.
Okay.
And they planted this red sunset maple back in 2013. It's been doing great, but now it's got dead branches. She has a twin across the other side of the driveway that looks good, and she's got a lot more of them. She's wondering what could be the issue. So we've got everything from the trunk to the foliage to, and I think we have, yep, there's the foliage itself.
Yeah, and so on the foliage, you know, the leaves, I was trying to zoom in on these. It does look like maybe there's some powdery mildew on these leaves, sort of some of that white color. I was looking at some of the brown spots on there, but those almost looked like holes through the leaf. I think I could see a hand behind there, so I don't know if those brown spots are really anything to be too concerned about. Has been a good year for anthracnose, and so that would be a potential problem for maples. But more concerning to me are the big wounds that are on the branches and on the trunk. And especially if we look at that picture of the trunk, where you had kind of that round or elliptical canker with kind of a black margin. There's one canker that is fairly common on maples, is Utapella canker, and that will kind of form those circular patterns or those circular rings on them. Not a whole lot that you can do as far as control, so really I would start to think about a replacement tree in that area. If you are getting more defoliation, probably time to prune at ground level.
All right, thank you, Kyle. And you have another one that is also a maple. He did send a picture of the whole tree, but what he's really worried about is the leaves get these spots every single year. This is a Lincoln viewer.
Okay. Yeah, and so these blotches, especially that are right along the veins, that's much more typical for what we see with anthracnose. And a lot of times those anthracnose lesions will be black. However, they can be white, just as they've disrupted chlorophyll production inside that leaf. So my guess is anthracnose. Really nothing to do as far as control. It's probably not hurting the overall health of your tree. It's just one of those things that happens.
All right, excellent. Elizabeth, you have a couple of IDs. The first one is an Omaha viewer. This one had her stumped, and she wondered what this one is, and do we know anything else about it?
So that is yellow meadow rue, not to be confused with just straight rue, but that one is a garden plant, so it is not a weed.
All right, nice, lovely, fluffy yellow flowers. And then you have a second one, and this one she's hoping it's not a weed, taking over the flower beds. They're 3 feet tall, and she is in Grand Island.
We fought these last year out at the Fauner Park. What these are a fleabane, like a daisy fleabane. They're in the Asteraceae family. If you like them, you will have more of them. If you don't like them, control them now. They are kind of a winter annual, so by pulling those up now before the seeds have an opportunity to get mature, that means that they're not going to be coming up again next year, but they will continue to spread.
And if you have one, you have many, because we also have this in the backyard farmer garden. All right. Well, you know, sometimes Mother Nature has plans of her own, and she doesn't care if you've already planted flowers and grasses in landscape beds around your home. She might help you with some other plants you don't want. So for our second feature tonight, Rock Gassois shows us a technique to get rid of the pesky, unwanted plants, but keep those good ones.
We've often mentioned the glove of death on Backyard Farmer, and actually we're not talking about a glove of death. We're talking about accurate placement of non-selective herbicides when you have those unique situations where a weed is intertwined, like a viney weed, in with a desirable ornamental, or you're trying to get the herbicide placed where it might possibly come in contact, and you want to avoid that with the desirable plant species. So to do this, we use 2 gloves. The first glove is impervious to water. You put the first glove on, and then over the top of that, you put a cotton glove. That cotton glove is going to be your applicator. Anytime you're applying pesticides, whether it be herbicides, fungicides, or insecticides, you have to wear proper attire. In this case, I'm wearing long sleeves and long pants, and I'll be wearing gloves as we demonstrate this technique. You take a ready-to-use product that contains a non-selective herbicide, something that might contain glyphosate or something that might contain, high-strength acetic acid, whatever your choice is. Obviously, both will work to some degree. You spray that on there. You don't want to have runoff. You want to protect your skin, and that's why the impervious glove is underneath it. And you want to wet the surface just enough so that when you place your hands on the non-desirable weed, you can wipe it across the surface. When you wipe it across the surface, you don't want to really tug on that weed. You don't want to detach the leaf that you're doing to, because you're using, in the case of glyphosate, a systemic product. That product needs to translocate down into the weed and down into the root system. That's why you're doing this. If it was a weed you could easily pull, that's what we would suggest. So you wipe that on gently, you just pull on it enough that you get the leaf wet. Take a look at the leaf. It should have a little bit of a sheen to it, meaning you've let some moisture go into that, and then let the herbicide do its work. In the case of using something like acetic acid, which is a desirable organic option, you want to make sure you cover as many as the leaves as possible. You certainly could have used a paintbrush and a mixture, but then you're opening up a container, you're exposing yourself to whatever it is you're applying, and this is a very safe and reasonable way to get the herbicide placed where you want it and not where you don't. Finally, cleanup is really critical, because you don't want to dispose of these products in an environmentally friendly way, but what you do is you leave the glove on, you spray it down with the hose, and you let that residue fall down to a mulch bed or into bare ground, because that's a legal deposition of the product. Then you take the glove off, you're still wearing the impervious gloves underneath, you squeeze that glove out, put it out to dry, and you're ready to use for the next time. Don't use that glove for any other purposes, only for this specified, very particular method of putting down that herbicide. So that's how you use what people refer to as the glove of death. It's accurate placement of non-selective herbicides.
And do be sure to follow all those label directions. Protect yourself when you're applying any herbicide in the landscape. We had quite a discussion about boots, gloves, and no flip-flops, right? All right.
Yes, we did.
Okay, so pictures for you, Wayne. This is a viewer in Omaha. Tall phlox, not looking good. She thought it was a fungus, and then she saw these little dudes on it. She would like to know what to do to stop this from happening.
All right, these are phlox plant bugs, very notorious for causing this kind of damage you can see in this picture. You're going to be looking at applying a product with the active ingredient of permethrin, and try to avoid blooms when you're doing this, because that will knock back your pollinators that are visiting those flowers. Be sure to get thorough coverage, especially on the undersides of the leaves. These things love to hide from you. If you want to have some fun, go out there, spot one, get closer to it, and watch it as it rotates around the stem of the plant for you. As you rotate around, it tries to stay on the opposite side from you.
Mm-hmm. And so do they overwinter? These guys, do they overwinter?
Trying to remember what they overwinter as, if they're eggs or if they're adults. I don't remember.
Okay, it seems like if you have these, you have them forever. Yeah, all right. Well, thank you for that advice. This is a just north of North Platte viewer, Wayne. She said these showed up just a past day or so, thousands of them flying in the backyard, about a ½ inch long. They were very upset with her for weeding. So she was covered with them. What are they?
I battle thousands of these things every year in my yard. I have 2 linden trees that they absolutely love. Mm-hmm. It looks like I have Japanese beetles in my yard because they attack these, they attack the, let's see, I'm trying to think of all the raspberries, they get on the strawberries, they get on all of the rose family plants, and they do that skeletonizing on the leaves. So they are rose chafers. Most commonly you find them on roses. I was going to bring those for samples tonight, but then I thought, oh, we got a picture, I'll pick something different out. These are something that Carbaryl, or the active ingredient 7, works really well for. If you're going to be applying it to any kind of plant you intend to eat produce off of, pay close attention to that pre-harvest interval to make sure that you're following that. They will be done after about another week or two. They seem to stick around for about 3 to 4 weeks in my neck of the woods, and then they kind of disperse and disappear.
And you can't blast them with that brass nozzle hose? That doesn't work?
No.
All right.
No. It's my favorite weapon when it works, but
Not on these?
not these. I use my fingers. I pinch a lot of them.
All right. All right. And then you have another one. She called it a thing. She was trying to figure out, is it a wolf spider or a fishing spider? She didn't kill it. She said it's about 4 inches long. She is terrified that it's going to have babies, or it's going to keep revenge on her if she goes after it.
So for our viewers, 4 inches is like this, and that would be the
Legs.
legs on that. That is definitely one of our fishing spiders. When it comes to spiders in ID, the first thing that I look for is the eye arrangement. Wolf spiders have what we call a little square on top of the head with the 4 main eyes. So those are the larger eyes, that's how you tell them apart. On this one, when I zoomed in, it was just barely not pixelated enough. I could see the straight line across the front. So that would mean that this is definitely one of the fishing spiders. And this particular one is the largest of the fishing spiders. This is Dolomedes.
Thank heavens. 4 inches is way plenty.
And this is one that we do see most common away from water. As the name implies, there are some species that do catch aquatic things to eat, including tadpoles and small fish. However, this is the one that most often strays away from water. So not necessarily something we need to be real concerned about. If you're looking to remove it from the area, I suggest a bucket and a piece of like poster board that you can slide underneath it once you have it trapped in the bucket, and then you can release it outside.
All right, excellent. Thank you. 4 inches. All right. So this is a papillion viewer. They have a 4-foot tall wall, which I didn't show you the picture of, 15 feet deep. They've used blue spruce and columnar pines. They're trying to figure out what's going on with the blue spruce. The bottoms seem really sparse. They have new growth on the top and on the ends, but then they've got this going on. What do we think this is?
Yeah, so this is most likely one of our needle cast diseases of spruces. We're getting a lot of questions on that kind of earlier in the season, but there are 2 main fungi that are the main causes of these needle casts. There is Rhizosphaera needle cast and there is Stigmina needle cast. Both of them will kind of cause these black little bumps to form on the needles, but it's only on the second and third year growth. They don't affect this year's growth. As far as control, it's just something to note for next year, and if you would want to apply a fungicide, this is one of those times where we ask a fungicide application when the needles are about half expanded, and then again when they're fully expanded, but it's too late to do anything this year.
All right. Your next one is just a very interesting, this was on a linden, and she put it in front of that gallon milk jug so we could see how big it is. She wonders, what is it? Will it regrow? It's very woody, and is it edible?
Yeah, so kind of a lot to answer there. First off, is it edible? Well, as John Porter has said before, everything is edible once, but we would not recommend you eat these. I think that this is a pheasant back mushroom, also known as a dryad saddle. Typically, their margins are a lot more rounded. But again, this is an older one, and as they get older, they do turn leathery and then kind of woody. But if you catch them early in the season, they will be pretty good eating. But once they are to this stage, I would leave them alone. It should come back on the linden next year because it has colonized that sapwood. But it's probably not causing a whole lot of detrimental effects to the linden either.
All right, excellent. And then you have a Phelps County viewer who has a maple that has this going on the trunk. She's wondering, could this be caused by the sprinkler system hitting it and weakening the bark? Should she do anything about it? And apparently she has a neighbor who has the same issue with also a maple.
Could be the sprinkler. Not entirely sure about that. Really, I think that this tree is not long for this world, unfortunately.
Yeah.
This does look like so hypoxylon canker is another one of our cankers that we get, and its characteristic symptom or characteristic features of it are just these black stroma or bumps that will form kind of all over it. I think that's what you're dealing with here. Again, not a whole lot that you can do to save the tree aside from increasing overall health of the tree. But even then, this tree is not long for this world, and I see Elizabeth shaking her head out of the corner.
Vehemently.
Yep,
Yes. So pick a new tree now, and maybe you'll have a replacement here soon.
All right, thank you, Kyle. Elizabeth, this is a Grand Island viewer. They have had the thread branch or false cypress, the yellow one, I've forgotten the cultivar name, in this location in the western part of Grand Island for 12 years. This is the first time they've had a problem. It seems like they're dying section by section. They've tried to prune out the affected parts using a sterilized pruning device. They're watered regularly. What in the world do we think is going on here?
We think that it had a very good run. Those plants don't live very long, very far west. And so Grand Island is probably the farthest west that it's probably had a chance to live. The main thing is just to prune the dead out as you see it, disinfect your pruning tools. It's hard to know if the rock is playing any role in this or not. Some of those branches look like they were off toward the back, so I'd take a little bit closer look and see if you see any cankers or anything else on those canes that you're taking out. But you know, just enjoy it while you have it, because they usually don't live that far west.
Exactly. All right, and then we have a viewer with a 4 to 5 year old tulip tree, very few leaves this spring. They're pale in color, and they're wondering about, should they be concerned about the lack of foliage, the pale color? They've really done nothing different. This is an Omaha viewer.
You know, I'd wonder if it had something to do with environmental conditions, with that cold snap and the buds coming out about that time. The main thing is just aim for that inch of supplemental water a week, and then just continue to watch the tree. We want to avoid fertilizer, but we just want to keep a close eye on it to see if it continues or if it just rebounds next year.
All right, excellent. Well, we always give you announcements of things going on in the gardening world, if there are any, and of course there always are. First off is Digging Deeper with Backyard Farmer. You can watch it on Facebook Thursdays at 8 o'clock Central, and follow us, Backyard Farmer in NET, Nebraska. Way fun doing that show. And I think we also then have still the Nebraska Statewide Arboretum's online plant store open until June 24th to get those Arboretum plants, arboretumplants.org, to be able to order those. All right, we have about a minute and a half for a couple of questions. Are you ready, Wayne, for a question?
All right.
This is a viewer who wants to know if he sprays insecticide on the turf to kill the fleas. A, does that work? And B, does it hurt the turf?
They actually do make insecticides that are labeled and formulated to kill fleas in turf areas. When we deal with wildlife and pets that are in the yard, they do have the capacity to have fleas in the yard, because we've got to remember it's only the adult fleas that will feed on the animal. The larvae tend to feed on decaying things in carpets or out in the yard. So yes, it can be used, and no, if it's using the correct product in the correct way, then it should not harm the grass.
Excellent. All right, we have a viewer, Kyle, who wonders about spots on their aster coming up from the bottom. So perennial asters.
I'd be curious about what color the spots are. Again, if they're white, most likely going to be powdery mildew. If they are darker, maybe a red or a pink. I know aster does get some Cercospora leaf spots as well.
All right, Elizabeth, in 10 seconds, is there anything people can do to encourage their trees to grow faster?
No. Oh, we really want to avoid fertilizing our trees. They don't require fertilizer, and if they absorb it from the lawn, that's probably more than enough. The main thing is the water.
If you ask them nicely.
All right, we're good.